Are you part of this specialty coffee trend, and is it just another fad? Welcome to vlog number 3. Today, let's talk about what is this specialty coffee trend and why are people so into it. This ongoing specialty coffee trend is actually a small element of something much bigger known as the third wave of coffee. Now, to understand all this, you have to actually look back at the history of all the coffee trends, which is also known as the waves of coffee. Now, before we begin the time travel, I gotta say that there's been a lot of arguments and debates whether what really defines each wave and who or which organization, starts each wave. And I think it'll be easier for you to digest if we simply break down each waves into big noticeable differences in coffee consumer behaviors. So let's begin. So towards the end of the 18th century comes the rise of the first wave of coffee, when the beverage became popular across Europe and the US. Now, the keyword that I use to describe the consumer behavior for this wave is instant. Now, two very important events happened during this wave that really revolutionized the whole coffee industry and really kick-started this whole coffee culture as we know today. In 1884, an Italian gentleman by the name Angelo Moriondo invented the very first espresso machines for commercial use. And as you may guess, espresso literally translates to express or fast. This machine allows for a very quick brew of black coffee shots, or what would later become known as espresso shots. And with this, grab-and-go espresso became the go-to drink for a quick caffeine hit. There were places everywhere in Italy and later on around Europe called espresso bars, where people would just go in, sit or stand at the bar, order a shot of black coffee, scull it, and then off he goes. And then a little bit later on, at the start of the 19th century, came the inception of instant coffee as we know today. It was actually first introduced for use during wartime, but then later on commercialized and became a mass production thing for the mass market. And with this, coffee began to be traded as a global commodity. A matter of fact, about 50% of world's coffee production today still goes into the making of instant coffee. So if you love instant coffee or quick espresso shots with cream and sugar, you are still part of this first wave of coffee. Now onto the second wave. The key word here is quality. Now, quality in this sense meant an improvement in the quality of the drink itself, the coffee, and also the cafe experience, and hence the introduction of the cafe culture as we see everywhere today. The cafe culture is basically where you go and meet up with your friends or family at the coffee shops and have a chat over a good cup of coffee. The demand of specialty coffee actually starts in this wave, although it is still in its infancy. And to mention the second wave, you just cannot ignore the biggest driver of this wave, which is Starbucks. What Starbucks did was pretty much prove that people are willing to pay a higher price for a good cup of coffee in a nice cafe ambience. And as a result, hundreds of cafe chains popped up all across the globe following Starbucks' business model, and therefore the price for a cup of coffee bumps up to about $3 to $4 a cup. So a lot of coffee shops actually make an effort to try create the warmest vibe in their shops and hire and train friendly staffs to provide the best service and create a relaxed environment for people to come meet up and hang out. All this to satisfy the massive market demand for the second wave coffee consumers. And then comes the third wave. Now, some people might perceive that the behaviors of the consumers riding this third wave is all about the artisanal craft of brewing coffee and drinking only single origins, but really that's only a small piece of a much bigger picture. And the big picture of this third wave is traceability. Traceability in this sense means being able to track all the processes in the coffee supply chain. For instance, how it is roasted, how it is processed, or where the beans are grown. And from a third wave customer's perspective, the more upstream in the supply chain they can track, the more attachment and enjoyment they get from drinking their cup. And usually the higher the traceability often means that the quality of the coffee is higher. To further understand why this is so, I have to briefly explain the two ways or the two types of coffee being traded on the global market today. One is known as the commodity coffee and the other is known as specialty coffee. Alright, starting off with commodity beans. The supply chain for commodity beans usually goes like this. At the country of origin, the exporter or distributor buys coffee beans from farmers and local producers, where all the different grades and varieties of beans are all mixed together. This therefore results in minimal traceability with unknown processing techniques or bean varieties, and usually only traceable to the origin country or the growing region at best. The importer then buys the beans from the distributor at the coffee price or the C price on the commodity exchange, and once arrived the beans go into the industrial roaster and manufactured into instant coffee or distributed to retail coffee shops. A little bit more about the C price. The price varies depending on the global supply and demand, which can be affected by events such as weak harvest, oversupply, internal politics, or maybe some catastrophic events. Due to this C price, the exporter will usually buy coffee beans from farmers and producers below the C price to make profit, which doesn't always guarantee fair trade for farmers and producers, meaning that the revenue the farmers get may be lower than the actual production cost. So in summary, commodity coffee has low traceability and can involve unfair trading for upstream suppliers. So this can be viewed as unethical by some coffee consumers. Now, on the other hand is the specialty coffee, which does not follow the C market price and usually demand the minimum of the fair trade price plus added premium for its high quality. Quality is usually graded with the SCAA cupping score and is considered specialty if the coffee scores over 80 points. Now, this secures reasonable profit for farmers and also encourages them to grow and produce quality beans. For these reasons, we are starting to see independent roasters and even baristas travel to the countries of origin along the coffee belt to source and work directly with farmers and producers to educate and exchange knowledge on what is in demand and how to help create beans of the highest quality. Now, on the end of this supply chain, the consumer knows exactly where the specialty beans come from, right down to the name of the producer, the estate that grows it, the variety of the beans, and the lot or the exact harvest date, which ultimately increases the perceived value of coffee. So with all this, the third wave coffee consumers can enjoy their cup due to one, they know exactly where the coffee beans come from and that they're ethically traded and processed, and two, the coffee they're drinking is of premium quality. So in my opinion, this specialty coffee trend isn't a fad. Even Starbucks tries to keep up with this third wave by creating a new brand called Starbucks Reserve to satisfy the demand of the third wave culture. I think it's about how people are becoming more aware and valuing traceability of what they consume, not just coffee but food in general, and how they are valuing sustainability and support for local farmers and producers. And lastly, the exceptional coffee that comes with this third wave trend is just the product of it all for the end consumers. So as long as there are still people who cares about traceability and the quality of coffee in their cup, I believe that this coffee trend will continue to grow. And with that, we conclude our vlog number 3. So happy drinking coffee.